Bing Bang Bank. It's episode 32 of Unedited.
At the bank.
Jordan, why'd I say bank?
Because we're at the bank.
That's right. So this week we're batch cooking 2 episodes. So this is recorded last week, but we're putting it out this week. But we still have some spicy stuff coming down the line for you. We are, first of all, going to be parlaying about a topic, which I think everybody will be able to connect to. So hang in there for that. In the neighborhood, we're talking about how our church is going through prayer and fasting right now.
Yep.
We're just going to break that down a little bit, have a conversation. What is fasting? What do we do with it? How do we interact with it? And at the end, we're doing some How About You, where we'll be giving you a challenge for feedback and chatting a little bit about what we talked about last week in our episode. So let's get right into it.
Let's do it.
What's your name?
My name is Jordan.
I'm Ethan.
Good to see you.
I realized that I didn't introduce us there.
Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
And if I don't see you,
Yeah.
good morning, good evening, good night.
This is not the way to do first interactions.
It's good afternoon, good evening, and good night. That's what it is.
There you go.
Nabbit.
You know
Come
what?
on, Ethan.
It's a long day.
It's a tough day, man.
Yeah, it's a long day.
So politics.
Okay.
Let's get into it.
All right.
No, I'm just kidding.
No, I don't want to do it either. As soon as you said it, I'm like, I'll entertain this, but
Yeah.
I'm not really going to go too far in it.
I was wondering if I would perk up some listener or viewer ears where they'd be like, huh? You
Yeah,
know? And
yeah,
then
yeah.
we just leave it.
You should have been like, so tariffs are coming up, right? Like, it's going a big talk
Honestly,
about
you
this.
even referencing that is more than I wanted to get into. So
I made you uncomfortable, didn't I? You're like,
no, I'm not uncomfortable. I'm
You're
just like, I don't want to have any idea of
Yeah.
people thinking that we're saying
Yeah.
one thing or another.
yeah.
So
You're like, Jordan,
yeah.
shut up. Let's move
me
on.
and you can talk about tariffs after, okay?
No, we won't.
I'll book in a meeting.
'Kay.
I'm penciling you in for this evening at 7:00 at your
Tariffs?
house. I'll come to your house.
Okay, and we'll talk tariffs.
We'll talk tariffs.
Right, sounds good.
All right. So thank you so much for everybody for tuning in and watching. We hope that this is an encouraging and fun time of your week.
Mhm.
And one of the ways we want to do that is by starting off this episode with a parlay.
Here it is.
So we join and have a debate over a specific subject. And the idea is that we're going to find out where we are. Last time we had a parlay was, what was the subject?
Cable versus streaming.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I realized I got pretty fired up about that.
Okay.
I'm going to be more reasonable today.
All right.
I'm not just going to come at you for no reason, okay?
Okay.
This I promise to you, Jordan.
I want that fairness.
Give me your hand,
No,
brother.
I'm not. You're not holding my hand.
Okay. All right. Well, let's get into it.
Actually, anyways. Yeah.
Come
Keep
on.
going. Keep going.
Out with it.
No, nothing.
Okay. You're like, actually, I've been
like,
meaning to bring that
I
up.
lost it.
You've touched me too much in the workplace. Stop touching my
Do
hands.
not
Stop
touch my
touching my
hand,
shoulder. Okay. Anyway, this has already gone off the rails. Let's get into parlay.
Parlay.
Are you ready to parlay?
Let's do it.
Parlay!
Parley.
Johnny Depp from Pirates of the Caribbean. Not that my voice just sounded like Johnny Depp, but
Yeah.
that's what. Can you do a Jack Sparrow saying parlay?
I can't. I'm not very. I honestly, I'm not even gonna get into it.
You're not good at impressions?
No, I've never watched it.
You've never seen the Pirates of the Caribbean?
Not one.
What?
Haven't.
Blasphemy.
I haven't. That's why I didn't want to mention it.
So,
So
first question that comes to mind is, like, what sort of trauma have you got with pirates where you can't watch that? Like, what kept you away?
I just never watched it.
Did you go
I
to a
don't.
theme park and a pirate was mean to you or something?
I watch 5 to 10 movies a year,
5 to 10.
unless
That
we're
is
counting.
capped.
Unless we're counting Christmas stuff.
Yeah.
During the Christmas season, I'll do like 25.
Dude, you're a movie fiend. That's why. That's 100%
I
cap.
used to be. I don't know. I don't know why I never seen those. I just never did. And I like Johnny Depp. Some of my favorite movies he's in.
You
But
like Johnny Depp,
I do.
even post trial.
I like Johnny Depp's movies probably before Pirates the best. So
I'm trying to get you into a situation where you say something controversial.
you were
here.
trying to do that, yeah. So
Okay.
yeah,
Let's just get.
I mean, you're
into
the
it,
one who
shall
brought
we?
him up. So
I'm really this whole episode. I guess what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to catch you in something. I don't know what.
well, you brought him up. So
Did I?
yes,
I don't think I did.
yes, you did.
I did. Okay. Well, what we're going to parlay about today is something that's coming up, something that's very obvious in our culture,
There we
which
go.
is the advent of love in the calendar, the hallmark holiday of Valentines.
Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Right.
What do you think about Valentine's Day? Off the top, what's initial impression when you think Valentine's Day? Just for you, don't start extending. Like we'll talk about what we think about it in a broad context, but in your life, what do you think of Valentine's Day? Like it, don't like it?
Like, I think like it.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. There are parts I like about it. There are parts I don't like about it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like for you and Nicole, do you make a date or anything?
Yeah.
Or
Typically, most years we try to get out for a meal or something on that day.
on the day?
Usually
'Kay.
try to, but if not, sometime close to it, right?
Okay.
I think of Zara and Jovi. They love making like little Valentines for their friends. So like that's become a thing lately where like, Zara's already started hers and like she's into like these little bead things. I don't even know what they're called, but you iron them.
Yeah,
And,
yeah. Those
and
things are awesome.
She makes them for her friends and stuff. And
Oh,
so,
cool.
yeah, she's kind of in that mode right now. So it's, it's a celebratory thing for them, right? I think they enjoy going to school and doing that. And I remember being a kid and loving that stuff too.
Yeah.
But yeah, we typically do for the most part.
That stuff made me anxious as a kid, man.
Yeah. Did it?
Because there was somebody I liked and the rest of the class.
Okay.
And trying to navigate that whole thing was
'Kay.
like, ew.
Well, and I guess looking back on this now, back when I was in like school, like nowadays, I don't know if this is true in all contexts, maybe it isn't, but it seems like when you take Valentines, especially at a certain grade, you bring them for everyone in the classroom.
Yes.
And in my days, it wasn't like that. It was selective.
Really?
Yeah. And so like some people might give me one, I might give them one, I don't get one from them, and like it can cause a whole lot of weird little dynamics. I'm glad that we don't live in that way anymore. Like I guess, and I'm talking
Yeah.
like probably like 1988 here, like kind of stuff,
so
right?
that's-
So it's a long time ago.
Before I was born. Yeah.
So
Because for me growing up, it was 100% everybody gets one. That was always the rule.
Yeah.
If you do Valentine's cards, you have to get the whole class. So then you buy those boxes of like 32 or
Yeah.
whatever.
And so this is how out of touch I am. When Zard started doing this for the first time, I was like, like, who's she giving these to? And Nicole's like, oh, it's for the whole class. And I immediately had like a sigh of relief. I'm like, oh, perfect. Do you know what I mean? It's how it should have been, right? But I remember it being a little bit different where it was more selective and you gave it to people you were close to, right?
Yeah.
But then there's those awkward moments where someone gives you one, you don't give one back. And it's just
And
a
then
little
you're
strange.
scarred for life.
Wow. Can affect you, right?
Yeah. You know what what really affected me when I was in junior high and they did those matchmaker quizzes.
Yes.
So they would like give out these bullet sheets and you'd fill them out and it was just for fun.
Mm-hmm.
And then in high school when you could send like what was it called even? Like a flowergram or something. Like you'd send like, or they had like a chocolate you could buy for a Valentine. You send it to their class and somebody would go around from student council delivering them in the middle of the class.
Interesting.
And it was like the whole thing was, so it'd be like a fundraiser.
Yeah.
But anyway, those things were intense, man. Because junior high school, you're at prime, like hormonal rage time, where it's just like I remember sitting there filling out those little bubble sheets in junior high, being like, I hope somebody likes me.
Yeah.
I hope that I get matched with somebody. Like I hope that I'm significant in some way.
Did they give you a list of 10 people that you were matched with? Because I got that. We did that in like grade 12.
And you'd have like a number one. And then usually it was
So-
like, and the most heartbreaking thing is if you got matched with somebody and then they were like, ew. And you were like, dang.
Yeah.
Just devastating.
I remember my match. I was in grade 9. Actually, I was in grade 9. And the person I was matched with was in grade 12. And I was like, oh, dang.
Oh, dang. You missed it.
Probably won't work. Yeah.
By that much.
But I remember, but we only did it once though. But are these still a thing?
I don't know.
I wonder.
It seems, honestly, like as an adult looking at it,
Yeah.
it seems iffy, man.
I know.
Like, why would,
That's what I'm thinking. Even as we're talking about this discussion, I'm like,
why would you put that stuff out there?
Yeah.
Like, why are you putting kids, teenagers through that stuff? But, okay, well, let's get into Valentine's Day. So I think that we've already established as a kid's thing, maybe as a youthful thing, it's kind of fun. It's kind of lighthearted. It gets a little bit more treacherous the older you get and the more the hormones are going on fire in your brain. You know what I mean? But I think, like, let's talk about it from the perspective of adults, because I highly doubt there's any sixth graders sitting here with bated breath waiting to
wondering
hear
what we're
what
going
we
to say.
think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But I think Valentine's Day is one of those things that has a lot of opportunities to be tricky for people, you know? So me and my wife, we celebrate Valentine's Day, but usually not the day of,
Okay.
because it's insane the day of.
Yes.
And everything's expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And like we used to do like bookings at the keg or whatever, but you have to be like 2 months out, depending. I don't know what it's like post-COVID, actually. We kind of stopped before COVID doing this stuff. Have you experienced that at all? Do you know what bookings are like on Valentine's Day these days?
They're still full. Still pretty crazy. Yeah.
So like how far out would you have to book if you want to go to Earl's or
I
something?
think I've only done it once in like the last 4 or 5 years, but
Okay.
you need to be in there. I'd say a good 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
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 Like you should have your thing booked probably now, I would think, right? So
I tried to do a last minute one year because I realized too late.
Yeah.
No luck.
I tried last year, and Earl's and like the Keg had like 11 p.m. and I was like, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
So I don't think
although that might be the time to go.
That might be quiet at that point, right? But I remember thinking, no, that's not going to work.
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, it's interesting because lots of people see Valentine's Day as sort of just like a consumerist holiday, right? Like where it's just like, it's just an excuse in the calendar for people to buy cards and chocolates and candies and dinners and to just buy. And, you know, we've probably all heard that perspective where it's like, I don't need to have one day a year where I prove my love. I'll like spread out all this money and attention throughout the year. You know, what do you think about that? Is that?
Well, yeah, look, I understand it. I get both sides. I understand the consumerism part, right? Like the minute like January 2nd rolled around here, I went into like, you know, my supermarket and I saw Valentine's stuff everywhere, right?
Yep.
So the jump happens quick. I do think that there is definitely some marketing around it, that it provides an opportunity for that. So for me personally, I don't buy flowers anymore on the 14th. I'll wait for the next week when they're 40% less. And that's not a cheap thing. That's just the day itself doesn't have to be that day, right? It could happen anytime throughout it. In fact, I think sometimes like, you know, just coming with flowers on a random day throughout the year is maybe the most thoughtful thing ever, right? Like in the sense that you thought of it and it didn't surround an occasion, right?
Yeah.
So I understand some of that. I get some of that, but at the same time, I do enjoy it. I think there's some good parts to it. It's a good excuse sometimes to get out for a meal or maybe a movie. And they've kind of quit this in recent years, but they used to always make these like big time, like Valentine, like rom-coms kind of thing, right?
Movie comes out.
Yeah, you don't see them as much anymore, but those used to be popular. I remember we definitely hit a few Hugh Grant ones throughout the years, right? He always seemed to end up in these things, right? So there was one about piano. I forget what it was, but we went and saw it one year where he's a musician.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But like, so I can understand the commercial arguments where people might just completely want to bow out, but I can still find some redeeming factors in it too.
Yeah. You know, Deadpool, the first movie was, they did a whole thing where their marketing was like, it's a Valentine's movie.
Interesting.
And it was pretty funny because if you went to the movie, you would be very disappointed if you're hoping for a rom-com, you know, because it's like Ryan Reynolds Valentine's movie, great, but it's actually like, you know, a pretty different movie. Anyway, it's
this just in, Hugh Grant has one coming out this year at Valentine's Day. The new Bridget Jones Diary movie. Interesting. Is who was she? Was it
Bridget Jones,
Renee
presumably
Zellweger? Yeah, is she in it? Okay, interesting.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Hugh Grant is back on the scene. I knew this guy was notorious for this.
Hugh Grant is in The Gentleman.
He always shows up at Valentine's Day. I don't know. Is he?
That's like the movie with
Matt McConaughey.
Yeah.
In The Rock.
Have you seen that movie?
Yeah,
The Rock. Did you say The Rock?
I can't remember who was in
it.
So
no.
I remember it being like an outcast group though, like a people coming together that I didn't expect.
It's an all-star group.
Yes.
It's got Colin. Is it Firth? What's his name?
Yeah.
Is it Colin Firth, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, he's awesome, dude.
Yeah. No, I did see it. It came out just before I think it came out in like 2020, didn't it? Or 2019. Just before COVID. Yeah. It was like the last movie I went to the theater.
And then in 2023...
And the theaters weren't a thing for a while.
Yeah, there you go.
So
in 2023, they did a TV show about it, and there's a second season coming out.
I've never watched. And now I'm going to have to go find this out now. Thank you.
It's good. Obviously, anybody watching or listening, check your own standards, but I think it was good.
Yeah.
Okay, the thing about Valentine's Day, though, I kind of poked you with this question a little bit in terms of, you know, people saying things like, I don't need a day in the year to celebrate Valentine's, like or love or whatever. I'll do it throughout the rest of the year.
Yeah.
The thing that I would say is I would push back a little bit on that. I'd be like, you could say that about birthdays.
Yeah.
You could say that about Christmas.
Yes, you can. It's exactly where my mind went. I'm like, you could say this about Christmas and Easter.
Canada Day, whatever. Yeah. It's like, I don't need a day to celebrate Canada Day. I celebrate Canada every day, you know?
Yeah.
And I do appreciate coming from the perspective of like love should be something that you are actually, it's an intentional day-to-day thing.
Yeah.
But I kind of find it interesting that the sort of pushback on that, but to understand that people are fed up. I think that's where that comes from. You know what I mean? Where people are just fed up with the idea. It's like, why do I have to spend more money? Why am I pressured to be in a relationship on this day? Like, what if I'm single on this day or whatever? And like, why does this have to be such a big focus? Like, can we just chill out? And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But I would also say that if you do want to celebrate love,
Mhm.
do it on Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, it's good.
Or do it around then. But like
Yeah.
pick a day that's going to be your day. Like Alyssa and I like rarely do anything the day of anymore. But we'll
Okay.
go we'll have a date
Yeah.
at some point in the week around it, you know?
That's kind of what we've kind of came to, right?
Yeah.
I used to like the day, actually, to be honest with you, just because, I don't know, I think at one point it was just like, but not in like, it's hard to put words to this, but I think it was just I don't know, just the timing worked, right? And it was just like, sure, let's just go out that day. That sounds
Yeah.
great. It seems like a good day to go out.
Yeah.
Not that we wouldn't have gone out a week later, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it just, I think at one point I was a bit more committed to the day,
Mhm.
but now it's like, nah, anytime around that week or whatever,
Yeah.
week after, it's all good, right?
Well,
We'll celebrate.
I think the biggest issue with like the day specifically and stuff is that we run into this place where like there's a cultural message taking place
Mhm.
where it's like you shouldn't be single.
Mhm.
And I think that's harmful.
Yes.
And I think it's like stupid
Mhm.
because the idea that like it just gets promoted everywhere. It's not just necessarily and like so from a married man's perspective, like I don't care how much Valentine's Day stuff I see, but I may or may not participate in it, but I don't care. But I also have a lot of friends who would say like it's just a stupid sucky day where everybody's not available and everybody's making their date plans and everybody's talking about it, and I'm just like, I guess I'll just go play video games by myself or whatever, you know. And that kind of brings us to the rise of these things like Galentine's Day,
Yeah.
or recently I heard the phrase coined Guyentine's Day,
Okay.
which I'm not as comfortable with.
Yeah.
But it is interesting, you know. But the idea where people can celebrate, you know, like love in their platonic relationships and like have a day dedicated to it and just be like, whether you're single or not, let's get together and we'll celebrate love together, you know.
Yeah.
I think that's cool.
Yeah.
Don't you?
Yeah, I do. I love it. My wife and producer Ashley, actually, and a lot of their friends get together. It's been a long tradition now on February 13th to celebrate Valentine's Day. It's just it's time for them to celebrate each other, lift each other up, enjoy each other's company. It's a good time, right? I'm sure. So I love that stuff. I think all that stuff's fantastic. Yeah.
I support that. Yeah.
I do.
Especially because like friendship love, platonic love needs its day too.
100%.
We should have like a National Friends Day.
There you go. There probably is something like that. Just doesn't get any attention, right?
It probably
There's
is
like a
something.
national something day every day, I think, right?
Yeah,
Like
but nobody celebrates it though.
Yeah. Oh.
That's the thing.
Right on.
Ashley's going to be typing.
I was just
something,
gonna
I'm
say
sure.
she's gonna tell us what today is. I'm sure at this point.
But
so.
the thing is, it's like nobody. It's not a big thing. Like it's not all happening. Wednesday, July 30th, 2025, National Friends Day.
There you go. That's awesome.
Hey, Wednesday we'll be recording an episode.
Yes. So you could buy me lunch. This is amazing.
Hey, perfect.
This is gonna be great.
I still
lunch
owe
on
you.
Ethan.
I owe you.
Perfect.
Well, I feel like we've probably talked enough about Valentine's Day, but just a interesting conversation. By the way, something that was really funny when I was a teenager was there was a young adults group at the church that I went to, and it was primarily single people going to this young adults group, and so they organized this event, Single Awareness Day, SAD. And the whole campaign was just like a guy with a tear rolling down his streak as a picture of it.
Okay.
So they just leaned into the idea of it's like you're single and sad. And it was just like lighthearted and like these are all single people.
Yeah.
It's not like a bunch of married people
Yeah.
mocking that or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really funny because they had a blast.
Was it a hit? I was just gonna say.
They just went
Yeah.
for it. They were just
Yeah.
like, let's make a joke out of it instead of like, instead of buying into this idea where the culture is telling us we shouldn't be single and we're the ones that are kind of outside of culture this day.
Yeah.
Let's own it. Let's take it back and let's make a joke about it and have fun. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So
No, I hear that.
anyway, happy Valentine's Day to you, viewers and listeners. Hope you have fun, whatever you're doing.
Enjoy
Hang
your
out with some friends, have a date.
Cinnamon hearts.
Yeah.
Do you like those?
Yeah, I like cinnamon
You
hearts.
do, eh?
You know
Hey,
why?
I always wondered if
because
people
you
like
eat them
those.
once a year. It's like candy canes.
Yes.
I don't eat candy canes except for at Christmas time.
It's like butter tarts.
Nope.
I knew you were gonna say no.
Jordan, don't bring this back
We've
up.
been down this path before. Do you like those hearts that have the things written on them? Like
Yeah.
those little candy ones? You
They're
like
kind
those?
of fun.
Okay.
You know why? Because
Yeah.
it's goofy messages to give to people, but it's also just, they're like crunchy, fun little, you bite them and they just crumble apart in your mouth. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Producer Ashley just weighed in on this. She said, but cinnamon hearts are better than candy canes. Do you agree?
It's debatable.
That is debatable.
Big
I
time
agree.
debatable.
I think it's debatable too.
You know, what'd be interesting
So
would
when I
be
read this, I'm like, well, slow your roll. Slow your roll here, right? Like,
what about a candy cane where the red strip is cinnamon heart flavor?
candy cane? Ah.
Although you can do the peppermint with the cinnamon, that'd be too much. I think. I reckon.
so.
I reckon you'd burn
candy
your nose
canes
off.
are like a couple flavors kind of going.
Yeah, I love
them.
those candy canes that are like not peppermint flavor.
The fruit
but
ones?
They got some sort of like sweet flavor or like
Yeah,
toffee. Or,
yeah, I like those too. Yeah. There's pink ones now that have like a fruit flavor, and they're tasty.
Let's go get some candy canes.
We might have
after
to.
this.
You know, they still might be on sale somewhere.
Okay,
So,
well,
yeah.
that's enough for Parley. We've gotten into it Valentine's Day, but really, truthfully, we do hope that if you got any funny stories about Valentine's Day or something, let us know. Let us know what you think about it. Maybe some of you can rage against it. Maybe some of you can rage for it.
Yeah.
Either way, we want to see rage.
Yeah.
I'm here for rage.
Yes, that's what we're here for. So
Succinctly put. So let's move on into In the Neighborhood.
In the Neighborhood.
So in the Neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
Jordan McClellan.
Yes.
We've been talking about community.
Yes, we have.
This series, Not Alone.
Mm-hmm.
And this weekend actually ends up being a prayer and fasting weekend at the Neighborhood Church.
Mm-hmm.
So we do this quarterly. And the idea is it's just an opportunity for church members to join together in a united participation of prayer and fasting. So we'll have specific prayer times, and we kind of tell people like this time, for example, like Friday until Sunday is like our fasting period collectively, and people can opt in or not. Like we're not forcing anybody to do anything here, but the idea is that we want our congregation to come together, our people to come together in community and join in fasting. So for In the Neighborhood, I just want to chat about fasting together. Is that cool with you?
Yeah, I'm good with it.
So you actually just recently participated in putting together a church booklet that just kind of talks about what fasting is. Because lots of times, particularly in our tradition, we don't make a huge, consistent, calendared approach to fasting, you know? Like I've mentioned this before, but my brother's Orthodox. And their fasting and feasts schedule is like very consistent, and they all participate, and it like they all know when it's coming and stuff, right?
Yeah.
We don't have that.
No, we don't follow the calendar quite like that.
Yeah, so we kind of need like a book to sort of like guide people a little bit and stuff. And so the question is like, what is fasting? What's the purpose of it? Why should we do it? You got any thoughts on that?
Lots of biblical accounts that talk about fasting, and so it's good to look through all those things and peek at it. If we're talking about fasting, like from like just a pure out definition, it kind of just means going without food or drink for a period of time, right? And you know, if we're talking about biblical fasting, it typically involves that same thing, but the focus isn't so much just on self-denial, even though you are denying yourself a little bit in that process, right? The idea is usually directed towards something that you're either seeking or looking for direction in or asking God for help in, I think. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And you go without these things. I heard one person once say you fast from food, but you feast on the things of God in that moment, and you look towards God, and you look for direction, right?
Yeah.
Jesus often said what not to do when you fast. He said, don't go around with a shirt on that says I'm fasting, right? like looking for like, you know, like looking for praise from people or whatnot, right?
I cancel my Vistaprint order.
Exactly. Get rid of the shirt, right? Isaiah chapter 58 talks about a type of fasting where you do this stuff, but you're not looking after the poor. You're neglecting the needs of others. You're not keeping justice and love and mercy and the right things at your heart, right? And so I don't know. I think fasting does a lot of things. It reminds us of our limitations as people, our need for God.
Yeah.
It makes us humble. It makes us depend on God. It's always for a season, never permanent. So, you know,
Don't permanently fast.
Don't fast for 365 days, right? Like, you know,
Yeah.
it's kind of more of a season.
Yeah.
In scripture, we see a ton of accounts of fasting, and often there's different reasons and different meanings behind them, right? But most of the time, almost every time, it's to humble yourself before God and bring yourself to Him in order to have either His leading or His help or His hand or His strength, whatever the case may be.
Yep.
Fasting should, in a Christian perspective, bring us closer to God.
Right on.
Is that fair?
That's first of all incredibly succinct.
Oh, good.
Very impressive that I just threw that to you and you just had such a great explanation. That's really good. So fasting is something that is ancient and like a very core part of our Christian faith.
Yep.
And previous to that, the Jewish faith as well.
Absolutely.
And even, like you could say, Roy, proto-Jewish as well, right?
Yeah.
Like previous to
Yeah.
Judaism. Proto-Judaic is the word I was looking for. There we go. But it is like a core part, and it's just interesting to think about fasting, especially when we come up to a time like this where it can be weird to engage with it if you've not heard about it.
Yeah.
If you don't know why.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when you go to church and people pass a collection plate and you're like, what?
What's this about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's going on? And I think even more so than the collection plate, which you might kind of understand a couple Sundays in if somebody says something about it, with fasting, you could go years of being a Christian, being in faith, even being raised in the church and still be like, why?
Yeah.
Like what?
Yeah.
And I think it can lead to like a lot of confusion, but I think you really hit a couple things on the head. First of all, I'm going to mention one thing you said, and then we're going to jump over to what Louis said this weekend specifically as an emphasis for us this upcoming fasting season, or whatever you would call that. Fasting weekend.
Time. Yeah.
First of all, the personal reliance aspect of it, I think is what really calls out to me with fasting, where like I need food.
Mm-hmm.
And more than that, food regulates my emotions. It regulates my energy levels. It helps me concentrate. It sustains me. And the idea of a little bit of physical, material deprivation, putting you in a place where you are more receptive and even intentional about spiritual enrichment is something that is just like you can't put a value on that. It's so rich.
Yeah.
And I think, you could go crazy extreme about this, but really it's just as simple as if you skip a lunch meal, take that time instead to reset yourself in prayer and re-anchor yourself and to, have a moment of saying like, I'm feeling a weakness physically and I want to respond with that in dependence on God.
Yes.
And I think that's a really beautiful and simple thing. Like just like that, just as a personal thing and a good way to reset ourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, fasting has all sorts of like physical health benefits in general.
Yeah.
In their own practices with the help of a doctor, please, or somebody, a nutritionist. Like we would not advocate anybody just start randomly fasting to try and get healthier.
Yeah.
But what Louis was focusing on this weekend though was that there's also a community aspect to it. Mm-hmm. Hence why it's in the series Not Alone, right? Where he's talking about how if we join together, there's a group edification that takes place as well. Now, something somebody asked me this past week was, like if in the Bible, Paul says, don't go around telling people that you're fasting when you're fasting, why would we do a community fast? Mm-hmm. Where we're all on the same page and we all know the dates and the times. Yeah. And then we're going to gather after and celebrate by breaking the fast together and celebrating what God has done and stuff. Like, why would we do that? Mm-hmm. And it's an interesting distinction. I was really happy that somebody with a sharp mind and good like biblical awareness asked this question because it is interesting to think. But I know what I said, but what would you say in that situation?
Well, it's the same thing what Jesus says about prayer. He says to when you pray, make sure you go into your secret, into your prayer closet, kind of, right? Like, and don't be doing it on the streets to gain attention from men. And I think like when Jesus makes these commands, even about fasting, I think he talks about it in Matthew chapter 6. I think what he's getting at is watch your heart. Watch your heart when you do these things, right? Like the point of this is so that you could depend on me and look to me and be with me. It's not to show how spiritual you are or how much more spiritual you are than the people all around you or to show off holiness or something. Like, no. This is about me and you, right?
Yeah.
And so recognize that when you're fasting, like this is about depending on me and you. Like even in the Old Testament, when they did fasts often fasts in those days were a sign of repentance. Like I think of Jonah. Jonah was supposed to bring this word to Nineveh. And then I think it's in Jonah chapter 3, they respond to God's word by fasting and putting on sackcloth, which was, we won't get into that today, but that was another practice, right?
Yeah.
But that's literally their response is a fast showing God that we've heard you and we repent kind of thing, right? And so I think that, to an extent, whenever you approach something like fasting or even prayer, you got to make sure your heart is postured in the proper place towards God, right? And that this isn't about, hey, look over at me kind of thing, right? Because like, I do think fasting should be something that should be very personal, and that you shouldn't go around advertising. And
Yeah.
do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
So I've had experience in both ways, right? Where
Yeah.
I've seen people, walking around with like the biggest water jugs, right? Like, I'm fasting, right? And I'm like, wow, if it's a biblical fast, keep that little chill, right? Like that's between you and God, right? Like, do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's so
Do
funny.
you get what I'm saying?
That's such a modern analog for that. It's like the carrying around a huge jug with like 6 cucumbers in it or something.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, wow, what a signal.
Yeah.
But
Sorry.
it's just funny.
Don't blow no one's cover here.
Yeah, that's right. Somebody just got exposed. With that. But I think you're 100% right there. It's about avoiding performative religion. Right?
Absolutely.
It's about saying like, this isn't about you looking good. All right. And there are times when you should be keeping your personal fasting to yourself. Again, everybody should be very mindful about their personal health when it comes to fasting.
Yes.
In ancient times, people weren't reckless about this. Things were calculated and understood, and there was also rhythms and habits that supported it. Their diet and lifestyle was different. So just don't go nuts, okay? Don't go from eating 6 candy bars a day to nothing for 2 weeks, all right? Let's just put that out there. But the idea of avoiding that performative religion where it's like about how you look.
Yes.
And it's about setting yourself up to look like a pretty freaking cool dude who really knows.
A very strong Christian or
Yeah,
something, right?
exactly.
Yeah. So, I think the minute if that's the point of it, you've missed it.
Yes.
Yeah, you've completely missed the whole point of the whole thing.
Now I want to pivot a little bit here, and I want to talk about some practicalities. Is that okay with you?
Yep.
So we've talked about like the heart of it and like why would we do it together?
Yep.
Just to reemphasize, I'm not too sure if we really hit this nail right on the head, but just to reemphasize why we would do community fasting together is to bond together, to come together and to support each other. And then coming out of it is a huge celebration together to say, we waited on the Lord.
Yeah.
We fasted, we deprived ourselves so that we could depend on him. Yeah. And now we come together and we just celebrate what God has given us, our community, the family, the body of Christ, right?
Exactly.
So that's why we would do it together. But we want to
often towards like a common thing, like there's something that's in focus for this, right?
There's a purpose.
Yes.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, which is kind of where I was going to take it in the sense that the mindfulness around it.
Yeah.
First of all, fasting for a purpose is really helpful and probably essential. Like I don't know that fasting just for the kicks of it is necessarily beneficial. Yeah. Unless it's for health reasons or something. But I remember when I was in college, I was at my internship in Thompson. Yeah. And I had really felt like I needed to spend some time fasting. And I was young, so I was still figuring out what my personal spiritual patterns would be as an independent guy instead of somebody who's part of a family. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I decided I was going to fast for, I forget how long it was, but I just went for it and I just like cut out meals. I was just like going really hard. And it was a week that I was speaking leading up to the Sunday. Oh my goodness. So I had extra prep time. Yeah. I was doing my schoolwork on top of it and I was running the youth ministry on top of that. And so just like a lot going on. And I remember going into it's funny to laugh about now because this is my personal experience, so I'm not mocking anybody for this, but I go into the sanctuary of the church and I'm praying over the lunch hour. And I just remember like this fluttering in my chest and just a huge panic attack. Okay. And just being like, what is going on? Because I'm supposed to be feeling closer to God, but I'm not. And, I kind of had a little bit of a breakdown where I ended up calling the organizer, the overseer of our internships. And I told him, I was like, I'm having a tough time out here. I need a little bit off my plate. And then he told my pastor, and my pastor was like, you could have just talked to me. And I was like, I didn't know what to do. I was just freaked out. You know what I mean? And anyway, it was so great to have 2 mature Christians come alongside me and help me with it. And they're like, what's going on? And I was like, well, I was fasting. And they're like, how did you do that? Like, what was going on? And I learned an important lesson that day where I was like, I was not ready for that. Yeah. And like I went too hard and I did it with like not the proper supports or forethought and just with like in a time where what I needed probably was more like rest and like sustainable behavior rather than something dramatic and shocking. Yeah.
Yeah. When you mentioned speaking, I was like, oh my goodness, kind of thing. I knew where this was going because like I've tried that before in a week where I was supposed to be communicating on the weekend, and it's just
gets you.
Probably not the right week, right? For me.
Yeah.
So.
Unless you're doing it in a different way, maybe. But like, I think the way that you and I would prepare, you need your mental faculties to be real juiced up.
100%.
Some good beef and broccoli or something.
I love that you share this though.
Yeah, and that's what I mean about intentionality and how you set it up. It's like God gave us brains. Mm-hmm. We're allowed to use them. You know what I mean? And the whole idea of using community for this as well. Like we should be intentional with the idea of not just like how we go about it in our heart stance, but also just being wise.
Yeah.
Like what are you going to cut out? How long is that going to be for? When are you coming back to food? Like you know, how are you going to manage the responsibilities that you have in your week?
Absolutely.
Because I don't think God wants us to just be like, well, forget my responsibilities. I'm going to fast. It's like, well, you should probably be faithful to what you've made commitments to. Yeah. And then work from there. So
absolutely. Can I quote something from Richard Foster quickly?
Could you please?
He wrote the book, The Celebration of Discipline, and he said spiritual disciplines are not an end in and of themselves. And that's so important right there. Just period. Like sometimes we treat these things like they're the end in themselves. Mm-hmm. He wrote, but they're designed to bring us closer to God and help us in the process of discipleship. And so that's how I see things like prayer and fasting and simplicity and confession and worship and these kind of things, right?
Yeah.
Is that they're not the goal in and of itself, but they do bring us closer to God, right? Mm-hmm. And they should help us in our process of discipleship.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they should be beneficial, not harmful, right?
Agreed.
I mean, that's the thing.
Agreed.
That makes me think just that there are some people out there who are part of church communities, even our church community, who their relationship with like food or nutrition because of health reasons or mental health reasons, like it's not a good idea to fast.
Yeah.
Can we just say that?
Yeah.
Can we just say like if you're out there and it's not a good time for you mentally or physically to be like removing meals from your cycles, like just like there's other ways that you can participate in this without having to do food deprivation specifically. And the church should never advocate for somebody to put themselves in harm's way because of it. So there's no spiritual justification for harming yourself over this, you know? So just want to put that out as a little bit of a caveat, but
no, I'm glad that you shared, and I'm glad that you shared your story too personally, because you know, there are things you learn in the journey with this, right?
Yeah.
And it's good to know, and I think that's why it's always good to consult to know where you're at health-wise and to make sure that you consult even a doctor before you do these things, right? To make sure that you can handle it, because you know, some people fasting comes so easy for, it seems like it's almost like it's not even a problem, and other people like, you know, you miss a meal and stuff, and you feel like, you know, anxious and things are getting difficult, right?
Yeah.
So you got to know where you're at with this. Let me just ask one more thing about fasting here, and this is off the topic from food and water.
Yeah.
You ever fasted something like that wasn't food and water?
Yes.
So some people would say that's not like a fast, whatever, and I'm not going to get into that today, right? But I'll tell you this though, it really sometimes is not only more difficult, but sometimes I've done these things where it teaches me a lot.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Like if you turn the TV off for 30 days, it's like, whoa.
Yeah, dude.
Did I ever spend a lot more time reading and with people and, and doing things that were like, you know, a little bit more like personal, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know. You've had experience with that before though?
Yeah, I have. So in teenage years, I definitely had done more like fasting TV or video games because I had recognized that probably was a larger vice in my life, you know?
It was going to hurt
more.
Yeah. Well, or at least you'd recognize it more. Sorry.
Well, yeah. And a more important thing to submit as well.
Yeah.
And, you know, it changed some of my habits moving forward. But I honestly wonder, like, if this prayer and fasting weekend, if some people would fast from TikTok for a weekend, how much more beneficial that might be.
Yeah.
Dude, like we don't have time to get into it.
No.
But our consumption of media these days and the absolute pithiness of that media is very harmful. I'm speaking from the perspective of someone who's right there in it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you know, maybe considering fasting something other than food could be the best thing you could do.
Yeah.
I might teach you a little bit about yourself, and There's a lot of things you could consider depriving yourself from to better yourself and to increase your dependency on God and
a lot to learn too.
Your integration to community. So
100%.
That's it for fasting. That's what's going on in the neighborhood this week. And I hope that like we see you guys participate in your own way, of course, taking into account everything we said. And, it's a great time to be together as a community and to really delve deep and unite in this. So looking forward to it. And with that, we're going to leave the neighborhood. We're going next door to How About You?
How about you?
How about you?
How about you?
How you doing?
I'm doing all right. To you?
It's a lame answer. Tell me truthfully, how you doing?
I'm a little tired right now.
Oh,
So.
nice. Okay.
We ate lunch, and I'm getting to that point where I'm like,
Turkey.
No, not turkey. But turkey would make me tired, though. That's so true, eh?
Yeah. So How About You? We're just giving a shout out to you guys. The truth is, you might have commented last week and we haven't had a chance to see it because this is, what did you call it? It's
a banked episode.
I was going to say baked episode.
Yeah, well, it's a baked one too. So.
It's a banked episode where we're recording this the same day as last week's episode. So we don't have your feedback yet. But what we're going to do instead, we're just going to put another challenge out to you where if there's anything that you would like to see us cover, whether it's newsworthy or whether it has to do with faith and culture or whatever, we would like to chat about it. Like we're not advertising that we're NT Wright over here or something. Like we're not going to be like, let me drop some wisdom in that hopper and see how that bounces around, But we'll talk about it, and we'd like to bring it into our conversations about what's going on at the Neighbourhood Church and stuff. So
absolutely,
let us know.
And I'll throw it out there as well. Valentine's Day stories. Love to hear them. Let us know your thoughts on that.
Fire away.
We talked about that. Yeah, fasting. Any thoughts you have on that as well? Honestly, love to hear it.
Shoot me down, but I won't fall. I am titanium.
That's it.
All right. Well, it's been a great episode. Thanks for hanging out with us. And we'll catch you next week for episode 33, maybe?
Unedited is a ministry expression of the Neighbourhood Church. Hosted by Ethan Andrews and Jordan McClellan. Produced by Ashley Drayton. Voiceover by me, M. Curry. Watch us on Instagram, YouTube, or Facebook. Or listen on Spotify or Apple Podcast. Thanks for listening.